What's going on, everyone? So there is tons of speculations and rumors surrounding the upcoming Scream 7. We have no official news or announcement, at least at this time. But let's do some little speculating. Let's do some rabbit hole ideas, because whatever they do in Scream 7, it's very likely going to be a full circle moment. It's very likely going to be that connective type to very likely from the beginning, all the way back to Scream 96. Now, they could go tie back to Scream 5, but just based on the direction and the structure in which they have gone, kind of leads me to believe that they're going to go all the way back, and it's going to kind of be the end of the Billy arc, right? We got this Billy Loomis style arc. I think you get the full circle moment, and whatever that is, they have the tie-in and connection, right? You have all the survivors from the last film. There's talks about them bringing back Sidney. Do you maybe bring back some random character, that do you bring back Martha Meeks, and you just have everybody that's ever Joel even, and just have them all full circle, everyone's involved, everyone's down, and you have Ghostface targeting them all. Bodies are dropping, it's getting crazy, and it comes down and boils down to, Sam and Tara and Kirby and Chad and whatever, and then maybe one or two of them die, and boom, big shock, big surprise, right? Now, there are also lots of talks about them getting Sidney Prescott back and trying to have Neve Campbell return, which makes a lot of sense, especially if you're going to go full circle moment. You want to have Sidney in that tie-in, especially if this is kind of the end of that era, right? You almost need Sidney in the film for that point. I don't think you need Sidney in Scream anymore. I think Scream 6 basically proved you can go with the new characters. You can go with the new direction. I mean, even Kirby, right? It was great seeing Kirby, but what did she do that a new character could have done, right? Even just her story for her character was a little all right, sure, I guess. It wasn't necessary. Even Gail, you didn't really need Gail in that movie. I mean, most people were you could have killed Gail and it wouldn't have mattered. You basically did. Why'd you even keep her alive? Right? So I don't think you need these here's the character from the past type thing. But if you are going to go full circle and you can tell a convincing story to tie it all together, then sure. Right? By all means. I wouldn't be upset seeing Sidney one more time, seeing Neve Campbell for one last show, especially with the way it ended. It'd be nice to kind of have that closure. Also, Scream 5, is the last thing we want to remember of Sidney Prescott her sitting in an ambulance? No. Or on an ambulance, not necessarily in. No, I would like to see her, kind of have that full circle moment where everything ends, she survives, Sam survives, and you ride off into the sunset. Maybe she's at home playing with her kids or something like that. We get that emotional, just farewell. I think that would just be so much better of a send-off for Sidney Prescott, and I just think would be more welcomed in the fandom, right, specifically. But the big problem is, how do you get Sidney back into the story to make sense? I mean, even Scream 5, Dewey was the catalyst, right? And Dewey was the reason that she came in. Are you really going to do that cheap trick again? Outside of that, what else would bring her to... she doesn't know Sam to that way. And yes, could you just say she feels sympathy for Sam because she was in that situation, she wants to help her? Sure. But she's got a family now, she's got kids. Does she really want to put her life in jeopardy and risk her kids not having a mother? The one thing she never had was family and stability in a family structure. So do you do something like that? The only way I see it really making sense is to put Sidney in jeopardy, right? Put Sidney in a compromised position where everyone else has to kind of rally together to go help her, right? That is something, especially if you have some time, because it's easier to do a tie-in and connection to Sam because she's Billy's daughter, if you're going to do a full circle thing, than Sidney at this point, without it kind of feeling like a retread. I think, and this is just one suggestion, I mean, there's multiple ways, but I think if you started off the film in a way to where Sidney was taken or kidnapped or perceived dead or something along those lines, right? I think, one, it would add that shock value. Everyone would be like, whoa, especially if that's the opening scene. You have this big climactic thing. Maybe Sidney takes out a Ghostface, because it's Sidney. She's going to be prepared for the attack. She's going to be ready to go. Maybe she kills a Ghostface or two and she thinks it's over and boom, there's like a whole group of them. There's like 5 or 6 of them and it's like this big end game, right? They've established kind of the cult setting and the cult dynamic. It makes sense that you'd have several Ghostface at this point. And the only way you're really going to get the drop on Sidney is if there's just too many of them and she gets overpowered. Like you could leave the perception of like, oh, did she die? And then, pick it up and midway point through the movie, boom, she's still alive and, she's been captured. Or you just could capture her. And then that's the catalyst to where it's like Sam and Tara and everybody, they have to get involved. They need to save Sidney. They don't want Sidney to die. And then you have like that full circle moment where Sam and the survivors go to this location, the climactic scene, the table is set for the big showdown, and they rescue Sidney, and now they got to face, whoever is the mastermind behind this all. Like that is kind of the approach that I think would make sense, and you could make that fit because you could it's all part of the grand plan. Right? Like we could have killed Sidney at any point. She's helpless. There's nothing she could do. This is it. Like, why did you keep her alive? Like, oh, because, it's part of the plan. We need Sam and Sidney together to make this, work, and you could even do like the stab tie-in, right? Where it's like, oh, like, Sidney and Sam, the 2 final girls in the movie, it's time for them both to die together. One kills the other. Type thing, they try to set it up to where Sam kills Sidney, something, right? I think you could do that and make it make sense. Because again, how do you blend Sidney and Sam together to make it make sense for the overall story without it seeming like, all right, like so they just did it just to do it, right? Like you want it to fit the story. I don't want to see it be like a cheap parlor trick, Think of like what they did in Scream 5. I didn't mind them killing Dewey. I am of the mind that like, yeah, okay, it was time for one of them to die. Cool, Dewey's kind of the odd man out, right? Gail makes the most sense because you don't need an explanation for why she's there. She always wants the scoop. She always wants the story. She always wants the report. She's just going to show up. And you're not going to kill Sidney. So I think Dewey was the most likely casualty. So I don't mind that. But I mean, that was the only reason you could really convince Sidney to come back. Like, so what? You're going to have her risk her family, risk her life, all this stuff to go and help somebody. Like, she didn't even want to go and help Dewey, right? Like, I mean, yes, you can make the argument like, well, that could be why she wants to help because she remembers what happened to Dewey. Again, like, she doesn't know these people. She doesn't know Sam, right? Like, she doesn't, like, why, if anything, you would think that she just, like, I get that Sam is kind of a casualty of the Billy Loomis thing, kind of like Sidney. And, like, you can write that to make it make sense, right? Absolutely. I'm not saying, like, you can't. It's very possible to write it to where, okay, like, these two add up and make sense. But I just think if you're going to have this grand film, you got to raise the stakes. You're not going to kill Sidney, but put her in a compromised position to where it feels like they did or they're going to. And you have the big climax where Sam and Sidney are teaming up together to take down the big bad. I just think that is, again, if this is supposed to be a film that's supposed to be the conclusion and the be-all, end-all, and this is supposed to be the full circle moment, you need to raise the stakes, right? Like Randy said, the body count's always bigger. The, death scenes are much more elaborate. Never ever trust that the killer is dead. And then, you talk about Scream 3 where, basically the killer becomes superhuman, right? Well, we're in the version of Scream 3 for this modern installment. We need to get to that point. We need to have the stakes. We need to have the body count. We need to have the blood. We need to have these moments where it's like, oh, no way, right? Like, you gotta have the in-game level type film, but you gotta kind of have that in, the Infinity War style setup, right? So I think you do that by having Sidney be compromised in a just a tough position where it's either perceived that she's dead, something like that. Not just that, but like how do you integrate Sidney into the story without her becoming the main focus and taking away from everybody else? You have the problem is Scream has painted themselves into such a corner with so many surviving characters. How do you tell a story convincingly for those like 7 characters that are alive and also tell a convincing story with Sidney Prescott? Very likely they're going to do what they did with Scream 5, where she's really kind of only in it for like 10 minutes of the movie, right? So I think if you're going to do that, it's best to have an explanation why she isn't there. Like, why isn't she helping throughout the whole thing, right? If she's going to help, why isn't she there? Well, if it's reversed and she needs the help, right? And Sam and everybody, maybe Sam's reluctant and she wants help. Maybe it's Tara, right? And that's why I think there's another point where you could make the argument of Sidney being in the compromised position, right? Maybe Sam is like, no, we're not going to go help. Like, she's Sidney Prescott. She'll figure it out, right? Like, let her figure it. And maybe Tara just goes. And now Sam's like, man, like, I got to go save Tara. I got to help Sidney. Like, we got to go, right? Like, you could do something like that. I just think it would fit the story and the narrative, right? And it would allow you to kind of hide Sidney throughout the course of the movie without it being like, where's Sidney Prescott? Like, where she is. And you could have a couple moments here and there where you show Sidney and she's all tied up and Ghostface is just taunting her and stuff. And you could just have these kind of eerie, just memorable scenes and moments. And then it all culminates with the 2 final girls of the Scream franchise standing side by side, ready to take on the thing. I mean, maybe you even put Sam in a position to where maybe Tara and Sidney are captured. And it's like, choose one of them to die. Do you want Tara to die or do you want Sidney to die? And you're gonna do it. Are you gonna let Sidney die? Or are you gonna take Sidney's life, or are you gonna let us kill Tara? Because we're gonna kill Tara if you don't kill Sidney. Maybe it's something like that. It really raise the stakes, make something crazy. I think that would be great. But as always, this is a discussion, so I pass the question on you. Let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. What do you think? Do you agree? Disagree? Somewhere in between? However you feel, whatever your thoughts are, I'd love to hear it. Let me know down in the comment section below. That being said, if you haven't liked this video, hit that like button. Helps me out a lot. Lets me know you enjoy these types of videos, and I truly appreciate it. If you're not subscribed to the channel, what are you doing? Hit that subscribe button, follow by the bell notification, stay up to date with all things Scream and this wonderful community and all of our discussions. See you all in the next one. Thank you.